Riina Käi. If you face any technical problems, please don't hesitate to let us know by writing them on the chat box in the right corner. Today's webinar is hosted by the Chairman of the Management Board, Mr. Karl Brookes, and by myself, Chief Financial Officer Riina Käi. We will introduce the company's performance in the third quarter and will answer your questions after the presentation. Microphone rights are disabled during the presentation. Microphone rights are enabled to all participants after the presentation. The questions will be answered on the principle of first come, first served. I will explain how to activate your microphone after the presentation. We will now start with the presentation, for which I will hand over the turn for Karl.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining the Q3 2014 webinar today. Our key challenge remains the ongoing tariff dispute, and there have been some recent developments of which we'll inform you later. Aside from this, the underlying performance of the business remains strong, and we continue to provide an excellent service to our customers in Tallinn and some of the surrounding municipalities. This is further reinforced by our internal key performance indicators and our continued compliance with the services contract which we hold with the City of Tallinn that sets out very stringent levels of service that must be met by the company each year. With respect to financials, these have been significantly impacted by the increased pollution taxes paid in Q1 and Q2 and the legal costs associated with the ongoing tariff dispute. I'm pleased that the company now has a valid water permit in place with achievable levels of heavy metals that will be valid up until 2018. Aside from these costs, the company's costs have been relatively stable. I will now provide a reminder on some of the background of the tariff dispute and also an update on recent progress. So, AS Tallinna Vesi has been in court dispute with the Competition Authority since 2011. This dispute arose because in May 2011, the Competition Authority has unlawfully refused to approve the water tariff application submitted by Tallinna Vesi. Despite of the fact in 2012 the Estonian courts have deemed the tariffs part of the service agreement to be an administrative contract, the submitted tariff applications are fully in accordance with the privatisation contract sponsored by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, and approved by the Government of the Republic of Estonia in 2000. There are a number of legal routes being adopted by the company, of which I'll now provide an update. In May 2012, the District Court deemed the tariffs part of the services agreement signed in 2011 as part of the AS Tallinna Vesi's privatisation package of agreements to be an administrative contract, and as such deserves the full protection of the Estonian legal system. In spite of this ruling, to date the CA refuses to accept that the contract should be binding and therefore the local court case continues. Current tariffs remain in place until the courts have made a final ruling. Independent experts have been chosen by the company and the Competition Authority and appointed by the judge. These have recently been submitted these opinions have recently been submitted to the court, and we believe neither compromise the case from a Tallinna Vesi perspective. No court hearing dates have been currently announced, hence the final decision from the court could be some time away. On the 2nd of May 2014, Tallinna Vesi submitted a claim against the Competition Authority to the Tallinn Administrative Court to avoid the expiry of monetary claims. Tallinna Vesi is claiming compensation for potential damages of over €90 million for total losses over the lifetime of the international privatisation contract to its end in 2020, assuming that no tariff increase will occur up until the end of the existing contract period. So I'll now move on to international arbitration. After 3 years of intensive effort in trying to negotiate a solution, the Supervisory Council of Tallinna Vesi decided to commence international arbitration proceedings against the Republic of Estonia for breach of the bilateral investment treaty between the Netherlands and the Republic of Estonia. It is being claimed that the Republic of Estonia has breached the fair and equitable treatment requirement by changes to the law and activities of public authorities which have deprived AS Tallinna Vesi from tariffs approved according to the services agreement concluded as part of the privatisation back in 2001. Further details with respect to the ongoing legal case can be found within the Investors section of the company website and previous stock exchange announcement. Finally, Tallinna Vesi and its shareholders are committed to ensure that the company's returns are reasonable and in accordance with European norms. Since 2001, the real rate of return made from the privatisation is 6.2%, which is comparable with returns permitted in the UK and in the Netherlands. I'll now give you some of the operational highlights for the 9 months of 2014. Our first priority is to provide customers with high quality water, reliable water supply and wastewater discharge service. Similar to previous years, the overall operational results in the 9 months of 2014 have been very good. The quality of water supplied to our customers remains very high, with almost 100% compliance being achieved against the stipulated standards, based on 2,210 samples taken during the first 9 months of this year. Of those samples, only 5 showed high concentration levels of iron, which after additional network maintenance was resolved. The number of customer complaints has also improved by 100% compared to the same period last year, which is a direct result of improved performance of the wastewater network and improved communications with our customers. As we already mentioned in the last webinars, we've had problems with meeting the concentration limits for heavy metals, more specifically for zinc and copper. In September, the company was issued with a new water permit where the concentration limits for zinc and copper had been removed. This amended water permit is valid from the third quarter 2014 up until the first quarter 2018, so we therefore don't expect any further pollution tax charges associated with these heavy metals. I will now hand you over to Riina, who will take you through the financial results in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Karl. Now I would like to give you the overview of financial performance of Aktsiaselts Tallinna Vesi in the third quarter of 2014. I will start with the financial highlights and then we'll give more detailed overview about sales and costs further on. The general performance of the company has been good. Sales revenue in the third quarter has shown slight 1% increase compared to the third quarter in 2013. The increase has been driven by the sales of water, wastewater services and overpollution charges, which has risen by 3.5%, compensating the decrease in other sales. Cumulatively, there has been an increase in sales by 1.6% or 0.62 million euros. Gross profit for the third quarter has improved by 6.2%, being 0.46 million euros higher than in the third quarter of last year. The increase is impacted by the aforementioned increase in sales, but the biggest impact on the improved profitability comes from lower pollution tax expenses in the third quarter of 2014 compared to the comparative period in 2013. In the third quarter in 2013, we had an incident in the wastewater treatment plant, due to which the company faced elevated pollution tax expenses. As Karl already mentioned, the problems with the allowed lowered concentration levels for heavy metals that had a big impact on our financial results in the first and second quarter in 2014 have been solved. The amended water permit has no limits for heavy metals for third quarter onwards. Hence, we do not expect elevated pollution tax expenses related with heavy metals in coming quarters. Cumulatively, the gross profit is better by 2.7% or 0.61 million euros, supported mostly by higher sales as the costs have been relatively stable year on year. The operating profit has been stable for the third quarter in 2014 as well as cumulatively compared to the comparative periods in 2013. Operating profit continues to be impacted by the higher legal costs derived from the ongoing tariff dispute. Net profit for the third quarter in 2014 has also been stable compared to 2013, showing 0.6% of the increase as the lower interest revenues have been compensated by the lower interest costs. Cumulatively, the net profit is behind by 15.2% or 2.1 million euros, being highly affected by the impact of the change in fair value of the swap, but also by lower interest income and higher income tax costs on dividends. Eliminating the impact of the fair value change of swap contracts and higher income tax on dividends, the net profit was at the lower level of 0.1 million euros. Now let's move on to the next slides and I will comment on the changes of revenues and expenses a bit closer. Let's start from the sales. As mentioned before, the total sales revenue for the third quarter have remained relatively stable, increasing by 1% or 0.13 million euros. Cumulatively, we are above the last year's sales by 0.6 million euros. Total revenues of water and wastewater services were by 0.4 million euros or 3.5% higher than in 2013, amounting to 12.1 million euros. We are still operating with the frozen tariffs since 2010, and the increase in revenues is driven by the consumption. There has been an increase in both domestic and commercial sector. The domestic clients' consumption have increased by 3.4% or 299,000 cubic meters to 6.9 million cubic meters. Apartment blocks give the biggest share of our revenues in domestic sector, contributing 183,000 cubic meters to the increase in volumes in domestic client group. The cumulatively increase in the consumption of domestic clients of 2.3% or 462,000 cubic meters is also highly impacted by the increase of the sales to apartment blocks, which give 89% from the total increase, being also supported by the increase in the sales to individual houses. In the third quarter, also the sales to commercial customers have shown an increase by 2.1% or 48,000 cubic meters. This increase comes from all sectors. Cumulatively, the consumption in the commercial sector has been relatively stable, decreasing by 0.4% or 28,000 cubic meters. The volumes from outside areas has all in all gone up by 5.4% or 75,000 cubic meters. Water consumption has gone up the least, increasing 2.9% or 7.5 thousand cubic meters. Remaining increase comes from the increase in the wastewater volumes. Also, cumulatively, the volumes are higher than the comparative period in 2013. The biggest impact comes from higher wastewater volumes that are 10.3% or 277,000 cubic meters higher than in 2013. Cumulatively, stormwater volumes and revenues have been relatively stable year on year. The cumulative sales from non-regulated business construction activities has been in line with the revenues in 2013. This now takes us to the overview of costs. The company's underlying performance in the third quarter has been good. The operating costs in the third quarter of 2014 have decreased compared to the third quarter in 2013 by 0.15 million euros or by 2.1%. Cumulatively, there has been an increase by 0.5 million euros or 2.3%. Most of the direct production costs have remained relatively stable. The biggest impact comes from lower pollution tax compared to the third quarter in 2013. As mentioned already earlier, the pollution tax expenses in relation to heavy metals has been cleared from the third quarter in 2014, and the expenses in the third quarter 2014 reflect the pollution tax level with even slightly lower load. At the same time, the pollution tax expenses in the third quarter in 2013 has been impacted by the incidents in wastewater treatment plant. In addition to the low pollution tax expenses, there has been a decrease of chemical and electricity costs due to the better raw water quality compared to the same period in 2013. Electricity costs have been also affected by the low electricity price. Low electricity usage and price has resulted in a saving of 0.08 million euros that has been balanced by higher volumes worth 0.03 million euros. Other costs of goods sold have increased by 1% or 0.04 million euros. It is mostly related with a slight increase in depreciation costs. 21.6% or 0.25 million increase in administration expenses is mostly affected by the increased legal costs related to the tariff dispute. Cumulatively, the cost of goods sold have been stable, increasing only by 0.1% or 0.02 million euros. Administrative expenses has increased cumulatively by 18.4% or 0.7 million euros, mostly, as already mentioned, in relation to the increased legal charges that are caused by the ongoing tariff dispute, but also to the commencement of the international arbitration. If we would now move on to the cash flows. The cash balance as of 30th of September 2014 stood at 31.9 million euros. forming 16% of the total assets. During the 9 months of 2014, cash balance has increased by 0.2 million euros. Compared to the end of the third quarter in 2013, the cash balance has increased 7.4 million euros. The biggest contributor to the cash flows comes from the main operations. The company's receivables collectability continues to be at a high level. The company's cash flow from investing activities has also been positive for past 2 years. In the 9 months of 2014, net cash flows from investing activities resulted in a cash inflow of 2.6 million euros, compared to last year's third quarter positive inflow of 3.5 million euros. There has been a decrease of 0.86 million euros. In 2013, Tallinna Vesi repaid its loan in the amount of 3.8 million euros, and no new loans has been issued by Tallinna Vesi. Loan repayment has had its impact also to collected interests. During 9 months, the money paid for fixed assets has remained at the similar level to the comparative period in 2013, decreasing by 3.3% to 0.2 million euros. The money received for the compensation for pipes has increased by 3.1 million euros. Most of it is related to the sewage extension program that was finished in 2012, and the collections for the compensation for pipes under this program will continue till March 2015. In May 2014, the company replaced its loan from NIB with a new loan in the amount of 20 million euros. The cash flows from financing activities were also impacted by the higher dividend and dividend income tax payment. Thank you for your time and attention, and all your questions are really welcome now. Before we will start, we are now enabling the microphones for all participants. In order to ask questions, please activate your microphone as follows. Click on the microphone icon, choose Connect My Audio, and click Allow. The microphone is active when the icon is green. To adjust the volume, please once again click on the microphone icon. Adjust microphone volume. Please mute the microphone while not speaking by clicking on the microphone button. In case of any technical issues with the microphone settings, please don't hesitate to write to the chat window. I'll read the questions on your behalf. Jonas, there is one question coming up. It takes some time and we're waiting. There's a question by Jonas Jost. Would it be fair to assume that 0.25 million euros of the expenses were related to the legal fees, so the normalized net profit for the quarter would be higher by that amount? I will take this question. Most of the increase and the increase related to legal expenses are related to the tariff dispute and the commencement of arbitration. And hence, if eliminated the expenses, the profit would be higher. I have to double check the number, and I will come back to you as regards to more correct numbers. But yes, you're effectively right. Thank you. The second question comes also, and that is, can you provide the time estimate for the arbitration proceedings?
Okay, thank you, Riina. I'll pick this one up. Arbitration is a process where a neutral third-party arbitrator renders a final and binding ruling on the dispute, meaning that once the ruling is made, it is binding and a final judgment of the Estonian courts. We understand that the process itself might take approximately 18 months, from commencement of the arbitration. So that's an average duration in answer to your question. Just a bit more about the claim. ASTV's claim is for the full losses it has suffered. If ASTV's claim succeeds, all ASTV shareholders will ultimately benefit. Further procedural notifications will follow as per the ICSID regulations and rules, and of course we'll always keep you updated via the stock exchange announcements as well. But yes, in answer to your question, the average time is 18 months.
Are there any other questions? Let's wait a couple of minutes more, or 1 minute more, and in order to get some other questions if there are any. If there are no further questions, then thank you all for participating our webinar for introducing the third quarter results for 2014. And if you might have any other questions, you're more than welcome directly to turn to the company and personally myself or Karl. Thank you very much again and have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.